Good afternoon. My name is Teresa Tiechea. I work for Fundación SM. It's an educational foundation based in Spain, who is the owner of a publishing group under the name of Grupo SM. And well, this publishing house started more than 80 years ago publishing school books. And 5 years ago, they started to publish children's books, literature, non-fiction titles, etc. in Spain, and then they expanded to South America and Mexico. And a few years later, like 42 years ago, the owners of the company decided to create a foundation who was going to be the owner of the company, because they wanted to devote the benefits of the books to educational projects for children and teenagers who needed from not impoverished media, but neglected social class. And as we are really focusing in the promotion of reading and education in general, and we really care a lot about illustration in our books. And in Fundación, we have a branch which is focusing in illustration. So 12 years ago, we started a partnership, a very successful partnership with Bologna Children's Book Fair. And we created this International Illustration Award for people under 35 years old. I want to stress that because it's important. There were a lot of awards for professionals with a long career, but there were not awards that supported young people, young talented people. So here I am this year introducing you to Sarah Mazzetti, who was the award winner in 2019. Hello. And to Pei-Hsin Cho, who was the award winner last year. We are presenting the book by Pei, and we are also going to talk to Sarah. We are going to start with Sarah's title, which is called Lucila. And we're going to talk with her about how she decided to go for this title and what did she find in the story. Well, Lucila is actually a version of Pulcino. And then I wanted to ask you, why did you decide to go for this story, and where did you find it, and how many times did it took to you to choose that?
So, like, in the beginning, since the book needs to either be an unpublished story or a story without rights attached to it, connected to your country. So I was doing some research, and at the end of the day, I ended up, I guess, on the most obvious thing, which is traditional oral tales from Italy, but actually they're pretty much spread all around Europe. So Pollicino is Tambolina in English, something like that. And in Italy, these oral tales were collected by Italo Calvino in 2 volumes. So I ended up on Pollicino because I already did a drawing about it back in some years ago, and it had something that spoke to me, the story. But rereading it, I mean, the values that are being presented in the stories are very different from the values that we have nowadays. Like in Pollicino, this little child, Pollicino, basically saves his family from poverty by, you know, finding ways to find money and sort of trick other people in order to find money, basically. So, like, the values are really completely off compared to our values in our society. So I thought I wanted to rewrite it completely, basically. But what I really liked about the story was the image of the child being abandoned and, you know, leaving pieces of bread in the woods. So basically, in my version, which is actually another book, it's called Lucilla, and the protagonist is a little girl. The setting is a contemporary city in which poverty arrives, and poverty is a character itself that is being imagined by the people living in this city. When Lucilla, the child, is abandoned in the woods, that something very surreal happens. She starts interacting with the creatures living in the woods, with the animals, and basically, yeah, I guess it gets surreal at that point of the book. But then toward the ending, there is a reunion to the parents not in the city, not in a civilized situation, but in a natural situation in the woods. And so to become part of the woods, the parent and part of the nature, the parents and Thumbelina, Lucilla, will have to change their nature. So basically, that's the core of the book.
Yeah, that's the story. And then, well, I think the most interesting thing was that you took a very personal point of view. You decided, you told that on the book, that in classical tales, after reading a lot from Italo Calvino's compilation, you realized that poverty was a situation that arrived, and that people overwhelmed it or not in the way they could. But it was like that. Then on the story, the poverty disappeared at some point. And then you saw that it was very strong, and you wanted that poverty was a character. And actually the story is about a little girl, but half of the book is people talking about poverty is coming, how does it look like, does anybody have seen poverty before? And you make very beautiful metaphors about poverty there. So can you talk about it?
Yeah, it was actually my favorite part, maybe, to think about metaphors and ways to describe poverty. In some cases, it's more toward imaginative things. In other cases, a little bit more poetic, like when it's compared to fog. But yeah, poverty is a real thing that comes and doesn't leave, really, and has consequences, and the consequences are difficult to overcome. And so the thing is that poverty is something related to the human beings. In nature, there is no poverty because there is no knowledge of what consumerism is or what owning is. So there is this strong contrast between these two parts, and basically the human characters, in order to overcome the poverty situation that stays in a civilized world, will have to become something else that is not human, basically. But yeah, poverty is a real thing. It's not something that disappears at some point because we don't need it anymore from a narrative point of view. It's real, yeah.
Yeah, and then you talk also about, well, on the story you can see that there is a kind of game opposing humankind and how people can become evil for surviving. And nature, which embraces this girl in the forest and enjoys her and decides that they want to have her in the forest with the family. And also there is, well, your own tribute to Ovidio's metamorphosis that you can explain if you want at the end of the story.
So yeah, one of the things that poverty do to things, and human beings as well, is it makes it tough. It makes everything tougher, and also the interaction between people that have so many difficulties get aggressive. While in the woods there is no such thing. So everything, like, there is more of a very welcoming situation because of that. And yeah, the metamorphosis thing at the end is, yeah, the idea, yeah, that comes back from Greek mythology, that yeah, in order to become part of something new, yeah, the parents, so for instance, the parents, in order to become part of the woods, they become trees. And Lucilla, in order to stay there, become like a million insects, basically. Yeah, just falls apart in a million insects. Because otherwise they would have brought, human criteria, human values to the woods, and they would have spoiled that. But yeah, there is, of course, this, what I really wanted to show is also like the idea that human beings are not necessarily good or bad, but it's like the situation, the context that creates reactions and behaviors and all that, yeah.
And now I wanted to talk about your style. When you were awarded with this award, well, you have worked a lot in comics and also in graphic style, or you have worked a lot for magazines and periodical. And I wanted to ask you, because I remember we told you we were a little bit worried about your style regarding that we needed a picture book, not a comic.
Yeah.
And of course, the book is a mixture. It has like two reading levels. It has like the narrative on the classical picture book, but it also has a lot of dialogues in between on the images. And I wanted to know if it was difficult for you to find a balance between both, not being a comic, not being really like 100% picture book as we know it, or if you did it quite fast, or you found the style quite fast.
Well, as you know, it took me a while. Like, I did a lot of experimentation. Also, like, the style of the images is not something I had already done this way. I was used to work in collage by hand. I was used to work digitally. So there was a lot of experimenting in the images in general, and from a narrative point of view as well. Because, yeah, I won the fair with a comic book, basically. But of course, I knew that what you wanted was not a comic book. But my concern was that, when there are dialogues in the images, I wanted them to be read, straightforward, not to be placed up on the corner, basically. So the thing is that when we are in the city, there is an outside narrator that sort of describes the situation, and maybe just a few dialogues inside. But when we get to the woods, there is no outside narrator. It just happens very straightforward in between characters, and it's all dialogue. So it's not a comic at all, but yeah, since most of the time picture book do have dialogues aside from the images, in this case I try to put them inside. I hope it came out good. Sometimes when I see the images without the dialogues, I like them more, actually. But yeah, let's say that I hope I did a good job in trying to balance that, yeah.
And I also wanted to ask you about your personal decision. Your style is not realistic, not at all. And I wanted you to explain why you are not working in a realistic style, because there is also a personal position.
Yeah, so on one side it's fun for me to, I just find pleasure in playing with shapes and things. Sincerely, a lot of my work is just because I like to do it like that. But on the other side, I see that abstraction gives me the chance to be more open, to create images that are more open in maybe portraying some kind of thing. Like, for instance, the character Lucilla is a little girl, of course, but somehow you don't really know, like, her ethnicity, or even, yeah, she's a girl, she looks like a girl, her name is female, but really there is nothing really girly to her, and this is a bit the same with all the characters and stuff. And in general, in my work, I like images to be very open, so that, like, a little bit, like, kind of everyone can see themselves in them. I like the openness to the images. That's why I almost never go for a very figurative approach. But on the other side, sincerely, there is a lot of pleasure that I take out of having fun in trying to find new shapes, new colors and stuff, yeah.
And now I'm back actually to the beginning. Your background is not, you didn't start as an illustrator, studying fine arts or something similar. I think you studied visual communication.
Yeah.
And how did you end working as an illustrator?
So yeah, I graduated in Bologna actually in Scienze della Comunicazione, which is, communication basically. So it's a mix of journalism, sociology and semiotics. But yeah, I basically at some point in my life I realized that the only thing that I had been doing throughout my whole life and that I liked the most was drawing. And I just decided to give it a chance. So I studied illustration afterwards, and it worked basically. So that's how, that's how it went. Yeah. I gave a chance to my first passion. So
I also wanted you to tell to the people who are listening to us here, maybe there are some young illustrators, that you have a quite broad field. I mean, you don't only illustrate books, so I would like you to say, what are the different outlets for an illustrator, not only illustrating children's books?
So, like, I love comics, and so that's one of my, more rooted passions, and in terms of narrative as well. So, and I do a lot of illustrations for commercial clients and editorial clients because I need to make money. I also like it, but honestly, I would love to be able to, make books and, have only longer projects, or maybe just bigger projects, I don't know, but like also from a sustainability point of view, the industry of the book can be a little bit challenging to live out of it alone. But I also like the variety. I see that I had to learn how to be very flexible and how to adapt to, different kind of communication as well. And I also like the challenge to, find the right way to communicate in certain environments. So I guess it depends a lot on the person. There are some people that are really focused on just doing picture books, which is fine. Some other people will find it interesting in dealing with different kind of visual communication. But for me, it was also like, honestly, in the beginning, it was quite easy to make money by illustrating for magazines. That was, and it was exciting, in the beginning to be illustrating for international magazine. That was part of it. So it's a mix of, passion, what you like, but how you can pay the rent and stuff. It's a mix of things. Yeah.
And finally, I wanted to ask you if you had, when you were younger, maybe even now, but I don't know if now it's the same, if you had some influences. Who were your influences at the time, or who are now?
So when I was younger, I guess my influences were very different from what I like now. I guess now my influences come from many different things, that it is not just illustration, like painting, or, there are so many things that come together, and sometimes the influences are more narrative than visual. Like when I was working on Lucilla, I remember reading some books that were that made me think. One was Conversazioni in Sicilia by Vittorini. Another one was like a little collection of interview by Anna Maria Ortese. They're all Italian writers, so I don't know if anyone is familiar with them, but like in the books they were discussing poverty in very different ways, and poverty was not the core of the books. It was just something that they would discuss along. So sometimes the influences are narrative, some other times they're visual, and I love illustration as well. Like I've just seen the exhibition of the people, the illustrators that were chosen this year, and it's amazing. Like I love his illustration as well. So I don't know, influences are very difficult to, you know, gather, to think about, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. Now,
Thank you.
We are going to talk to Pei-Hsin Cho. She has a very different background. She comes from Taiwan. She started studying animation. And well, hello, Pei, how are you? And we are going to talk about her book, El Pescador y su Alma, which is based on an Oscar Wilde story called, under the title of The Fisherman and His Soul. And the first thing I'm going to ask, Pei, is how did you decide to apply to the Illustrators exhibition, to send your work, or knowing that your first background was animation?
Well, the work that I got selected into the exhibition was actually an outcome when it was starting of the lockdown and COVID-19, and I didn't get any commission in the beginning. And I just had a feeling during the first 6 months about the whole lockdown scene and the transition inward my heart. And I just decided to record the feeling transition down into comics. And then I just thought, since I got 5 pieces, that's the requirement for the exhibition competition. So I just submitted it. Yeah.
Yeah, and your work for Bologna, the one that was awarded, was, in my opinion, was quite different from what you have done later. For you, it's more, you don't see such a difference, but that's personal opinions. But the award that you sent was quite, I would say, private, because it was, you created during the lockdown, and it was a beautiful sequence of images of someone in an apartment, in a closed space, and then it came to the trees and the nature. And it was something that you experienced when you were living in Berlin, I think.
Yes, exactly. And I guess that's the style is different from the picture book, was because this is my first picture book, and I just...
You wanted to experience something new.
And the story is more like linear, so the comic was more experimental in the narrative in some way. So this is my first picture book, and I didn't dare that much to try too much new things. But I think I still do a little bit part of the comics because it's a picture book, so I didn't want to make the whole thing into a comics book.
So when we started to work, we asked you to select a Taiwanese traditional story or traditional tale. And in the end, you came to us with this story by Oscar Wilde. You are living in London. You are based in London now, so it also makes sense. So tell us, why did you go for this story? If it took you a lot of readings before choosing that?
Actually, I read a lot before I picked this one. But I originally really wanted to choose a Taiwanese legend or tales. But I found that... So the one that fascinates me was the stories and legends from the Taiwanese indigenous people. And I was worried that because the working time was limited, and I was worried that I didn't have enough time to do the research to understand their culture that much. So it might be a problem that I will misinterpret their culture. So I think if I really want to do that, I might do it some other time if I have more time. Yeah.
Okay, and the story is a personal version by Oscar Wilde of the Little Mermaid by Andersen, but it's very different. I mean, there is a very different relation between the characters, and it's a very long tale. Actually, it's quite a short novel. And I wanted to know how many times did it take to you to cut and take like the essence of the story for your picture book, what you thought was interesting for the picture book?
Sorry, say that again?
How did you do, or how many times did it take you, if it was long, to cut the story in order to adapt it to your own picture book? Because it's quite a long story.
Yeah, it's quite long as a picture book. So as you know, that we have a couple stages to cut the story shorter. I think we started since the beginning when there's only text. I already abstracted the main parts that I would really want to draw out. And then I started to do the storyboard. And at that time, I still trim the text. And then I think even when I was coloring, I still alter the text a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. And for the characters, the mermaid and the fisherman, was it difficult for you to find how they were going to look like, to draw them?
Slightly, especially for the fisherman, because I don't usually draw boy or males. And in this story, because in Oscar Wilde's text, he described the fisherman more like Greek statue, kind of muscular style. But after I read it, I feel like he has a personality of innocence, and I really want to show that in how he looks like. So I worked on it for a while, but the other ones, like the witch and the mermaid, it was quite quickly. Yeah.
The witch that it really looks like a bride. She's really beautiful. This witch doesn't look someone evil. Well, she's not really evil.
I
anyway,
don't think the witch is evil,
no.
because I think she's actually quite kind. But in the story, she was evil.
Yeah, this is why I asked you.
Yeah, and I didn't really want to make the witch evil, especially it is the case in most of the stories. But in the original story, there's a moment that when the fisherman wants to tell her that he wants to lose his soul, and the witch actually warned him that's not a good idea. But in that case, he still support his decision because that is his own decision, and the consequence is his own self gonna take afterwards.
Well, the story, yes, to make it short, is about a fisherman who falls in love with a mermaid, and he wants to be with her, but she tells him that if she wants to be with her, he has to take away his soul, because sea creatures don't have a soul. So he starts to meet people, asking to them if they can help him to take away his soul. And of course, there are very different reactions, like the priest, who thinks that's horrible because, well, you can't explain it because it's your story.
You mean you want me to?
The priest, he tells him that the soul is the most important thing.
He say the soul is most important than anything and than the goal. And the merchants, they say the soul is not even worth a penny. So I guess in the story, I just leave their words originally there because it just give the reader a thought that maybe you agree or maybe you don't, and you might start to ask yourself what's the value of soul to you. Yeah, I think actually that's the whole story is about, because I told you that I didn't think that this is a sad story.
Yeah, because the soul is a very interesting character. Well, the soul becomes a character and asks the fisherman when he takes it away that he needs a heart. Yeah. It needs a heart. And the fisherman doesn't want to leave the heart to the soul. Yeah. So the soul goes away and comes back every year trying to convince the fisherman to go with him, to go with her or with it, and to be together again. So fisherman doesn't want to go with, and in the end, he's interested in something that tells him, which is not richness, which is not wisdom, but it's something that he doesn't have. Yeah,
this was a human girl's feet that was attracted him to leave the mermaid and then went back to the land and then embrace his soul again. And then I don't know. I read a lot of research that they say it's about the pure of the desire of body, the sex. I guess at some point for the adult view it might be, but I imagine if I was a kid, I would just think that it is something really beautiful, and that's it. Yeah. And
So it's a story about love. In my opinion, of course, it's melancholic, can be sad, but you don't find it sad.
yeah, actually, I picked this story was because it was full of emotions, like all the conflicted emotions happens within the fisherman's heart. Like he really wanted something, but another thing was important to him. He is happy at some point, but he also feel very bitter in his heart. This kind of thing makes me find a story interesting because from where I come from, Taiwan, that I grew up in a very traditional family, and we don't really talk about emotions. We show each other our affections by asking how is your body health. And so since a kid, I just very interested in how to describe the emotions texture. And I think, especially under this kind of culture, if you don't get the resource for expressing or understand your emotions, then kids can get it from the book. And this kind of emotions like melancholic, people would think it's sad, it's bad, or angry, it's bad, and people tend to not talk about it. But I think understand this kind of emotions and how it works, or I don't know, any level, if you understand it, and then you can control it more. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. So talking about the artwork, I think it's really beautiful, but it's a little bit risky because all the book is in the same kind of green color. You saw it clear since the beginning that you wanted to go for a limited palette of colors?
Yeah, because in the beginning I was thinking what color should the soul be? And usually in most of the images the soul would be, I mean in other kind of commercials or stories, the soul would be blue or white or yellow. And I don't know, the green color is always more mysterious for me. And I feel that is how he is, the soul in this story. So I decided to use different kind of status of the sea and different shades of the green to blend into the whole narrative. Yeah.
Okay, and I wanted to ask you if, since you were awarded with the Bologna Children's Book for Fundación SM Illustration Award, you have seen that your career has evolved, if you have received more commands for working with any other publishing house, if there was any kind of difference for you?
Or
not really?
I did got more opportunity to know like other publishers or art directors. But since last year I was working on this book and I was super nervous about it, so I just postponed all the other works.
That's good.
But now I'm all free.
Okay, thank you very much, Pei. So thank you very much for coming to listen to us. Of course, if there is some young illustrator here, they are welcome to send their work to the Bologna Children's Book Fair for the illustration exhibition. And, well, I think that's all. I don't know if you want to add something or if you want to say something else, or...
I want to really thank the Children's Book Fair and you, Fundación SM, for the beautiful exhibition. I'm overwhelmed. It's so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.